Good afternoon, everyone. Patricia Ivan here of HarvestSprings Ministries. It's Mental Health Week, and we are raising awareness with some of our short videos around mental well-being, mental health, dealing with mental challenges, and managing, our mental health, particularly during this period across the world. So I've got here today, I've got to behave myself because she is my clinical supervisor, but also was my tutor in training. So I've got Annie Turner here with me, and such a honor to have her on this platform. Thank you so much, Annie, for coming on today. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Just before we go into our session together, I'm just going to say something very briefly about Annie. I think I've let the cat out of the bag by saying she was my tutor and is my clinical supervisor, and clinical supervisor to many. Annie is very much experienced within the systemic psychotherapy field. She retired as a consultant systemic psychotherapist. She was once managing one of the 5 key regions for Relate, also a psychosocial therapist, and headed one of the national health psychotherapy services within inner London. She is vast in experience and very much not just a clinician, but also wear the hat of a lecturer, a tutor. So she was the director of psychotherapy training program, and part of that I have benefited from it. So I'm one of her routines from that period. So thank you so much, Annie, once again, to have you here. I look forward to having these conversations with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia. And when you first sort of mooted this possibility, I just thought how exciting it is. So I was really honoured, actually, to be asked. So thank you very much. Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
It's an issue that's close to my heart, as you know.
Absolutely.
Mental health, and I think the more you talk about it, the more it gets light on it, and the more it allows people to maybe not to be so frightened of it, and also pushes it away a little bit, because I think it thrives in the dark and it thrives in secrecy. So the more we have light and openness, I think the more health there is. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. I think we're going to start today with one of the key areas in our world that we face again and again. I mean, statistics show even in the UK that 1 in 4 suffer from anxiety or depression, which we know is a form of mental illness or mental health challenge. So can you please tell us a little bit about that, Annie?
Oh, okay. So anxiety and depression, I think they are things that we have all experienced in our lives. I don't think they are things that belong to other people, and I think we sort of know about it, really. I think most adults can tell you about times when they felt very low or very frightened or very anxious. And I think people are right to feel anxious and worried at this time of COVID-19. I think we would be foolish people if we weren't to be worried. But I guess this worry, this sort of normal worry, can sometimes spill over into something and things that are called depression and anxiety. And I think they are different things, but they're often linked together. And I think depression or clinical depression is not just when we're fed up or we wake up one morning and think, oh, I don't know, I'd rather stay in bed today than go to work or whatever. Because I think they're the normal ups and downs of life, really. But depression sort of seeps into the mind and the body, and I think there's a really good description of that when depression sort of really enters your life, one can forget that anything in the past was good. You can forget that anything in the past you did was good, that somehow nothing is worthwhile and you're not worthwhile. And then it's very hard to think of a future that can be different. So depression is like a blanket that sort of silences good things, really. And it's very powerful. And, you know, if part of it is people thinking how worthwhile they are or not, it then silences people, because there's a fear that they will just get confirmation in this idea of themselves maybe being not worthwhile. So I think that's why depression is so powerful, really. And I guess the message is that depression can be helped. I know it's so hard, isn't it, in these really complicated days of COVID-19, but things that work, and they're simple things really, is some exercise, and exercise in the fresh air can be very helpful. That when you wake up, and these are really such obvious things, but you wake up and maybe you get yourself ready for the day, even if you don't feel like it, you maybe shower and dress. And those things can sometimes make a difference. They don't always make a difference. But it's just something that one can think about, I guess. And of course, good relationships are very helpful. And relationships in which you feel you can share your feelings and that people will respect them. So I guess there are, you know, important day-to-day things that can be very helpful. And maybe you've also talked to other people that for some people that the depression really can sort of affect them in very, very difficult ways, and that they might need to get some help. And that help might be sort of talking therapies, and it might be combined with some drugs therapies, but that's not always the case. I wouldn't wish people to think that if they start talking to their doctor or a professional, that people are always going to offer them sort of antidepressants. And of course, people always have the right to say yes or no. So that's sort of depression. And I just want to say something a little bit about anxiety, if that's all right, Patricia.
Yes,
and again, you know, anxiety is something which we will all experience. And anxiety is there to keep us safe, actually. If we start to feel anxious about something, it means we often do a very good risk assessment. So if we start worrying about a situation, that's good. I think it's a really fascinating fact. You know, we know sort of young people maybe not always understand risk. And that's because the frontal cortex, the front part of their brain, or anybody's brain, doesn't really develop until the early 30s. So that youngsters are not risk averse, okay? So I'm trying to say is that when you reach adult life, the idea of being anxious about things is again very useful, because it stops us doing silly things. It's when those natural feelings of safety sort of just tip into something else, where everything becomes a threat, and the world becomes a very dangerous place. And of course, it's complicated at the moment because, you know, it is a dangerous place. So that's a tricky one to manage, isn't it? But it's when one gets into a point of, there's a word, catastrophizing. So that whenever we think about the future, it's filled with catastrophe. You know, it's like if you start to help your child to think about how do they cross the road, there's always anxiety about that. But you're going to be with them and you're going to help them, aren't you? But there is always that time when your child crosses the road by themselves. Now that might be goodness knows what age, you know, but and it depends how busy the road is, but nevertheless, there comes a point where that happens. But if you're somebody who suffers a great deal of anxiety, you may never be allowed your child to cross the road on their own, because your mind will always go to that they're going to be run over or something bad's going to happen. So I guess the anxiety is when the normal things of life that help us be safe sort of go into another level of worry, really. So everything, the world is a very dangerous and worrying place all of the time. I don't know if that's what you were sort of hoping to be talked about.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm aware that we're going to have another session on the tools, you know, what are the helpful tools to really manage those things. But I think it's been really useful hearing and being able to name anxiety and depression and what it looks like, you know, when you were talking about depression, that, you know, you all of a sudden cannot think of anything good that you've done. You can't give yourself a pat on the back for anything and excuse yourself. And that is a form of depression, and it can happen at any stages in our lives. And then to hear about anxiety, those natural, normal concerns that you would have about maybe doing something for the first time, but it not going away and becoming a consistent worry and concern, even when you perhaps don't have as much reason anymore. You know, I think of when my son started going to school on his own, and naturally you worry that they're going to cross the road at the right time, they're going to not jump in front of a bus or a tram, and then, but of course that shifted for me. And you know, what he was just saying to me is, for many people, they're not able to shift that to a place of experience and competency, that okay, that child is not able to navigate those things, so you don't have to worry as much. So I think those have been really very useful things, and I just would like to say to anyone watching that please do tune into the next session, when Annie will be talking about tools that would help us manage these anxieties and depression a lot better once we've recognized that okay, this is where we might be at any point in time. Is that it? Do you have anything else you want to add at this point, Annie?
I think that's probably okay, but I did want to talk a little, and I don't know if this is a good time to talk, and it's sort of moving the conversation on a little bit. So maybe we'll say it in the next time that we talk. Actually,
the next time
maybe we'll hold that.
That would be really useful. Okay, thank you so much, Annie. It's good to have you on, and I look forward to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.